What's going on, everybody? Nick here. One of the most common requests for automators is, hey, I have this PDF or this file, and I want to parse it and turn it into some sort of structured data. How can we do it? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how, using a PDF parsing library, make.com, and artificial intelligence. In my specific case, we're going to be doing this on invoices, but you can apply the exact same approach that I'm going to show you to literally any type of data out there, whether it's maybe a resume, white paper, an ebook, an article PDF. Literally any sort of file type can be converted into structured data using the system that I'm about to show you. So if you guys have wanted to level up your parsing game, learn a little bit more about AI and maybe a couple of the cooler features that make.com has that you might not be familiar with, this is the video for you. Stay tuned and let's get into it. All right, so what I have here is I have a Google Sheet, and inside of this Google Sheet, I have an invoice URL column where we are going to store URLs of our invoices. You can get the URL of your invoice in a variety of ways. Sometimes you'll also just get the raw file, say if it's emailed to you, or maybe if it's in a big Google Drive or something that the client uploads. But I'm just showing you how to do it in this way. And this is probably the more complicated way. So if you know how to do it the way that I'm about to show you, you'll know how to do it in every other way as well. Then we have some fields that we're going to just parse the invoice for. So we have an amount field, which we're going to use to just store whatever the amount is that is owed. We're also just going to take all of the line items here and then just paste them in this line items column. And then we're also going to do some fancy text parsing, and we're going to extract the from address as well. We're probably going to use AI for this because it's a little more creative of an exercise. In terms of what the invoices themselves actually look like, I have them open over here. An example might be something like this. So this is a PDF from, I don't know, some service called Sliced Invoices, which has a default template available for us here. And PDFs are kind of tricky to parse. You know, there are several different types of PDFs, and I've explored all sorts of them over my career. Like you have PDFs with clickable text. So for instance, this is a PDF with clickable text. I can actually double click and I can select the data. And actually most of this is like already formatted for us, so the parsing is going to be pretty easy. I want to say that the majority of PDFs nowadays are probably like clickable text. If they're being exported from some invoice software, all this stuff is already done for you. But there are also a lot of PDFs out there that do not have clickable text, that are essentially just images. They're sort of like PNG images or JPGs or whatever. And when you mouse over them, it doesn't actually do anything, and you can't select it. And so because of this, there are a variety of different ways to parse PDFs. You can parse them through, like, if you guys are familiar with optical character recognition, basically there are a bunch of services out there that allow you to feed an image, and then it will try and make out whatever the letters are. So, you know, we could like have, let's pretend this is a PNG or something, or like a JPG, right? Those are both image files. We could take these image files and we could feed them to some optical character recognition service. And then we would say convert to text, and it would try to kind of figure out that this is an S, that this is an L, that that's an I. But you can imagine, because there's like 5 billion different font choices, you know, like the endpoints for this optical character recognition, and a lot of them are like older services as well from 5-10 years ago before we started using advanced AI. They're pretty crappy at that, and the results from the OCRs are not very good. So that's sort of like one way to do it. Another way to do it is you could just feed in like the whole PDF into ChatGPT or something. GPT-4 seems to do a pretty reasonable job, especially if the text on the invoice is selectable like this. So whatever your PDF style is, you know, will have sort of an effect on the bottom line. But yeah, that seems to work okay. And then the last thing is you can just use like a dedicated PDF parsing service. And that's personally what I do nowadays. I just use like dedicated PDF parsing services because they're super easy and super simple. So I'm not yet affiliated with any dedicated PDF parsing services. I've had a bunch of them reach out to me and try and, you know, sell me on sponsoring a video and that sort of deal. But I have poked around and I've tried a bunch of different APIs, and the best one that I found is probably the simplest one to remember, just called pdf.co. pdf.co, basically, if I just go to their little website here, brands themselves as like just the PDF end-all be-all that just turns PDFs into APIs, basically. And it's just very, very straightforward. They also offer you like 10,000 credits, I think, for free at the time of this writing. So you can imagine how like low cost it is on their back end, how streamlined and efficient everything is. And you can use those 10,000 credits to do everything that you need to do in, you know, testing purposes. And then once you figured out whether or not this works for you and you want to, you know, implement it into your enterprise workflow, then you can obviously sign up for a plan and subscribe and that sort of deal. But basically, the purpose why of using these dedicated PDF parsing platforms is because it just gets the data into a format that is much better, that you can use for basically anything else later on. Like if you think about it, text is the universal interface, right? Especially nowadays with large language models. So if you can just like convert a PDF just into text format, it doesn't even matter if you lose the formatting. It doesn't matter if like a human being would have to like squint and stare at it for 3 hours before making any sense of it. You can just feed that into a large language model and it can like process and reformat the text and extract everything for you. And that's sort of like the basis upon which now most of the PDF parsing flows that I've built out rest upon. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. I'm going to show you how to feed in one of these invoices into a PDF parsing service. We're going to extract the text. We're then going to feed it into AI. Then we're going to use AI to extract various portions of this text that we are then going to map into columns like amount, line items from address, etc. And I don't want you guys just to think that this is only doable with invoices. You can do this with basically any type of PDF file format. Another common request is doing this with resumes. So, maybe you're like trying to hire somebody or something, or maybe you run like some resume service. We can actually just parse the PDF and then feed it into AI, extract, I don't know, like their job history. You could extract how long they've been working for, what their hobbies are. You could obviously like extract keywords if you wanted to like automatically not allow somebody in, or automatically greenlight somebody. So there's a lot that you could do, obviously, and yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love AI so much and I love these applications. So what I'll do in this video is I'm gonna show you guys just how to take these and then just parse out these 3 columns, but just know that you can add however many columns you want. You just need to like add the logic on the AI parsing side. And you don't have to use invoices. You could use more or less anything. And then just to reiterate, you also don't have to do it in this format. Like you might be getting them as emails, but this is just the hardest way to do it. So I figured I'd start with the Google Sheet method. Okay, got a scenario open here called parse invoice add to sheet. First thing I'm going to do is I'll just go to sheets, and then because we're going to be searching, so I'm going to be testing this flow out a bunch. I'm going to be using the search rows module. So I have my email address set up over here, and then what I'm going to do is I'll just go to my invoice parsing example sheet, and then I have to select the sheet name and map all this stuff, so bear with me. And then I'm going to select maximum number of return rows, and I'm just going to set that to 1. And that way, if I right click on this and press run this module only, I will always get the exact same invoice, and then I can just use this to test. So you see the invoice URL I got here was this, right? And this is the file, essentially, which is pretty cool. Okay, there are a couple other things that we need to do, but I'll run you through the PDF stuff. Just go to add and then type pdf.co. And then there are a bunch of endpoints here that you could use, right? There's convert from PDF to images, convert into PDF, convert HTML to PDF. You can do a lot, right? They have like a million endpoints that are PDF specific. The one that most people use, and the reason why it's first, is because we're going to convert from a PDF to one of these structured data types. And I'll show you like 3 or 4 of them, just so that you could see what they look like for your use case. Now, when you click on this, you're going to have to connect it if you've never connected it before. So go to add. And then what you're going to have to do is sign up with the pdf.co API key. The way that you get that is go to app.pdf.co, sign up. There'll be an API key over here that you can just click copy. Then once you've copied it, you can go back to your make scenario, just paste it in. And then after you paste it in, you're going to be left with a connection like this. I just called mine invoice parsing example. Okay, so there are 2 options to put in the PDF. You can upload a file, or you can import a file from a URL. Now, obviously, our files are already in URL format, so it's going to be very easy for us just to paste the URL in. Let me just refresh this. And then go invoice URL here. And then we can also add an output file name. So I'm just going to do like example for now. All right. Now, there are a variety of different ways that you can do this. There's a simple endpoint, PDF to text, simple, no layout, fast. PDF to text, which is where they try and preserve the layout of the PDF for you. So what I mean by this, I mean like, well, from is over here on the left, right? All this stuff is over here on the right. They actually are going to try and convert this just into plain text, like a plain text file, and then just add a bunch of spaces between the two so that it's still in the same layout. There's no real reason for us to do this because we're just going to feed this into AI, so it's more or less meaningless. You can do PDF to CSV, PDF to JSON 2. JSON 2 is just their like new endpoint, which converts into JSON. I haven't actually experimented with any of the JSON or CSV ones, so we'll do that together. You can convert into HTML. You could also just like turn it into a JPEG or a PNG, so one of those like textless images that I mentioned before. And then you can also do like XML, TIFF, and that sort of deal. We're going to do the simplest one to start, PDF to text. And then pages allows you to parse specific pages. If you just leave this empty, it'll do every single page. If the PDF has a password, so some invoices may be password protected, some resumes may be password protected, you put the password in here. If you're trying to do this like en masse or in bulk, you can imagine how you might need like a password column to like dynamically map the password to the specific PDF. And then, we want a small task, so I'm just going to go to sync. But if you're running large batch tasks, so these PDFs have like 15 pages or something, then select async. Essentially what's going to happen if you go async is you'll send the request to the server. It's not going to output the actual like result in this module. You're going to have to go and then grab the result after a certain amount of time. But we're not going to do that. We're going to select sync, which is very simple and very easy. And then there are some other, they have like a big list of documentation. They have a bunch of documentation that shows you how to adjust the way that the PDF is parsed using what are called profiles. We're not going to do any of that, so we're just going to feed that in here. And then output links expiration, they actually set an expiration date on the output link in case you, are doing this at like batch services, or in case some of the data is secure and you don't want to like reveal it. You could set this theoretically like 1 minute. The thing that you'd have to do here is you'd have to do something with the data within a minute, essentially. You'd have to like request that URL that it gives you within 60 seconds. So in our case, I'm just going to leave this at 60 minutes because these are just silly little invoices that are examples. They don't really matter. Then the export type is download a file or JSON output. I'm going to show you how to do both. But essentially, you can either turn this into a file that you download and then parse, or you can turn this into JSON. And why don't we actually use JSON to start? That'll probably be a little simpler. Okay, we should have everything we need. I've fed the invoice URL in, and then I've done the rest of the settings, and then we're going to pull that from here. So I'm going to click run once. Let's see what happens. All right, so our Google Sheets search rows module ran and selected the correct URL, and then we converted the PDF, and it sent us back a bunch of codes, I guess. There's a page count, so it counted up the number of pages in the PDF. There's an error status, and this is false, so if this is true, maybe you could send up some error handling to do something with it. There's a status, there's a file name, there's a credits, remaining credits, how many credits you got left, the duration. I think the duration may be the number of characters, or maybe like the number of milliseconds, I don't know. But you can see we used 4 credits there, so we technically have 9,996. I don't know exactly how they're doing that processing, but whatever. Okay, now this is the text that we get. We get a bunch of links. We get the title, which is invoice. We get the payment is due within 30 days from the date of the invoice. Late payment is subject to fees of 5% per month. Thanks for choosing demo sliced invoices. Then we have a from. As you can see here, we have the invoice number, we have the due date, we have the total due date, right? The to. We have some line items here, which is pretty cool. Then we have the total. And the total is what we're going to be extracting. Along with, let's see here. So we are going to be extracting the line items. We're going to be extracting the total amount. Maybe we'll just call this total. It'll probably be easier to see. And then we'll also try and get the from address as well. And I actually want to get the full address. I don't just want to get the email address, so we may have to do some prompt finagling there. But yeah, this is just in a format that we can basically take and now dump into AI, and then AI can like actually parse and extract out this text for us. The benefit to doing it this way is you don't need the invoices to always be in the exact same format. Like previously, procedurally, if you wanted to parse this, you would have to like parse the term invoice number space, and then however many spaces there are between these two terms, you'd have to like match it every time using regex or something like that. But now you don't have to do that. You can just feed this into AI, and it's a lot simpler. So I'm just going to show you how to do this now using the create a completion endpoint, just while we're on a roll, and then I'll go back through and then I'll run through some of the other data types here, which may be a little bit simpler or maybe even a little bit harder. There are a variety of models, so I'm going to choose the create a completion endpoint. We could do GPT-4o. We could do a very handsome individual is driving a very cool sports car outside. GPT, I don't know why I always leave my freaking balcony door open when I record these videos. It's so funny. I gotta stop doing that. GPT-4o, GPT-4o 2024 0513, GPT-4 Turbo, GPT-4. I'm gonna just choose GPT-4o. This is like sort of I don't want to say it's a dumber model, but it is kind of a dumber model. So we'll see if it works. You're a helpful, intelligent, let's say data extraction assistant. That's what I'll do. Then we're going to add some messages. I'll say, you extract Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. No, I'm not. You extract data from PDF invoices. From PDF invoices, you'll receive a text, we'll just say like a text scrape of the invoice data, and your job is to turn that invoice data into 3 structured fields. We'll say total, and then line items, and then what was the last one here? From address. Return the results in JSON. So that looks pretty good to me. Let me just think if I need to do anything else. For from address, I'm going to say not the email, but the actual address of the sender. And then line items can just be a plain text dump. And then I'll say using this format. And then I'll say total. Total goes here. We'll say line items. Line item string goes here. And then we'll do from address. And I'll say from address goes here. Respond only in JSON, your first character, the first character of your response should be a opening bracket. Okay, great. The reason why I'm feeding it all of this information here is because I don't want to have to go through the pain in my ass of like teaching it and basically training it with a few examples. You could, and it would probably be a better choice if you wanted to train it. You could feed it in a couple of example PDFs and then see what the output is, and then add a user prompt for your instructions, which would be something like this, and then another user prompt with an example, then an assistant prompt with like what you want it to output. And even if you provided one example, it would do a really good job of adhering to that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I will feed in the body. Okay, so it's just body. So now I'm just going to feed in the body, which is, I believe, just going to be everything. I hope it's going to be everything. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Max tokens, I said 4,096 here, but that's just because that's like the maximum it'll ever output. I'm going to change the temperature to 0.7. I just find it a lot faster and easier to do it that way. And yeah, I'm just going to give this a run and we're going to see what it outputs. The reason we're doing this in JSON, by the way, yeah, so it already screwed up. See, it added these 3 little backticks. I hate when it does that. But the reason why we're doing it in JSON, just so we can parse it later, which is really nice. So the total was 9350, which is good. The line items is this. The from address is demo/invoices suite A. Okay, great. And I got the from address and stuff like that as well, which is perfect. The only thing we need to do is we need to change it so that it does not output. Do not output backtick JSON or any other sort of formatting. Okay. I'm just writing a very explicit instructions here. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add a parse JSON module. So I'll go to parse JSON, drag that puppy here. You may not even need to do this anymore. I mean, GPT-4 keeps on changing. They keep on changing how they do this. I believe you can now potentially even use JSON object, but I'm just going to use JSON here because I love wasting credits. No, I'm just more comfortable using it this way. And if there's one thing that I know, it's that make.com is a platform where just learn how to do it once. Like, you should obviously be constantly improving your skills, but if you know how to do it, then do what you know how to do. A lot of this complexity is going to be abstracted away from the customer or the client or whoever you're building this for. They're not going to see any of it. Okay, great. Now I have the output here, which is nice. We have the total, line items, and from address. And now what I can do with this is I can update a row, which means I can go back into my Google Sheet and then I can add that data. So I'm going to go to Invoice Parsing example here. And then I just have to map the rest of this like I did in the first module. What we'll do for row number is we'll go here select the row number from the very first module, which actually outputs the row number. And then I'm not going to update the invoice URL because we already have it. What I am going to update is the total, the line items, and the from address. Okay. So let's give this one final run and let's see how it performs. If I go back to my Google Sheet now, you'll see that I've now extracted all of the 3 pieces of information that I wanted to, the total, line items, and the from address, and that looks pretty good to me, honestly. I mean, we could change the format of this. Maybe we don't want, 1.00 web design, this is a sample description. But my whole idea here was I was just going to pump in the line items so that, if anybody wanted to double check this later, that they could easily, go back and do the math. We could also extract taxes. As I mentioned earlier, you can extract whatever the hell you want. You could do taxes, you could do the due date, you could do the invoice date, you could, grab, I don't know, does this include bank information? If so, add their bank details here. What is the payment due policy, right? What is the late payment subject fee, right? You can extract however many columns you want here. I'm just doing it. I'm doing fewer because I just want to show you guys how to do it, and then all of you guys have your own use cases, so that's that. Okay, so we've done it on one example, but one example is never enough to verify that this works. So what I want to do is I want to run this through another example, one that's much more complicated, and see if this still works. And then if it doesn't work, then see what sort of changes we have to make to allow this system to scale as needed and essentially handle multiple different forms of invoices and data. Now keep in mind, you may not have to do this for your use case. You may be receiving all of your invoices in the exact same format and all that stuff. So I don't feel compelled to, I guess is what I'm saying. Now what I'm seeing here is this is a really, really long invoice. This is 5 pages or something. So realistically, the invoice is really just on the first page. And then everything else is a bunch of silly stuff that's probably required by the government. Because this is, Canada Post. It's sort of I don't know, federal postage thing probably in the US, if you're more familiar with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually only going to grab the first page of this. We could even have a rule that says if the URL contains Canada Post or something, only grab the first page. You can imagine how, you're probably not going to receive invoices from everything and everybody under the sun. So that seems pretty reasonable to me. So why don't we do that? So here's a comma separated list of page indices or ranges to process. First page is 0. So I'll say if, and then I'm going to say contains URL, and then it'll say Canada Post. Then let's output 0. Otherwise, let's output empty string. Or null. I don't know. I'm just going to do empty string. So the logic here is it's going to check this invoice URL, which is this over here, Canada Post dash whatever. Then if it contains the term Canada Post, then it is going to output 0, which is going to say, hey, we only want you to look at the first page. It's one of those Canada Post invoices, which sucks. Otherwise, it's going to output an empty string. And the idea is an empty string should just be nothing. If that's not nothing, then we may have to use a different character here. Sometimes different APIs treat these things differently. But that should be okay for our purposes. And then I'm still going to do the JSON output export, and we're going to give all this a try. And then we're going to feed into OpenAI, we're going to parse it, and then we're going to update a row. What I'm going to do first is I'm just going to test this on these two. I just want to make sure that the parsing is good before I send everything over to OpenAI. It's sort of a good habit to get in, or sorry, it's a good thing to get in the habit of doing. And you see here that this parsed one row. So it just got my old sample one. So I'm just going to do 2 here, and I'll see how a batch job looks like when we send 2. Doesn't look like there was any more time that it took, which is pretty cool. Okay, so looks like this parsed out all the text basically instantly. I thought maybe there would be some issue with this, but it doesn't look like there was any issue at all. And just because I'm testing this, I'm just going to cut this down here, and then I'm going to put this up again just so that we can just get one result on this next test. I don't actually want to run this twice. I'm very careful with the credit usage, clearly. And then I'm going to feed this into OpenAI. And let's just parse the JSON before we update the row. Let's just do this incrementally at every step. Okay. All right, so the total is here. Line items are here. From address is here. Client 1, Client 2, sample business name, address 1, Barrie, Ontario, L4M 3C2. Let me just double check that this is correct. What I would like is I would like this. However, probably because this is Client 1, Client 2, sample business name, it's probably just pulling that. I wish we could have like an actual address. That would be so much simpler. Yeah. So the reason why it's pulling this is because it's attempting to, it just doesn't realize that this is like an example that the system put in. On a real invoices, you presumably would have an actual client name here, right? Hence why it's pulling that in as the from address, as opposed to this. This should kind of be the from address. But say levy, that's all right. We're just using an example. Any invoice that you guys use on your own end is not going to include that, I would imagine. Okay, there is another issue here. The issue is that this text is like formatted quite perfectly. So we actually have a $sign here. We have a $sign here too, now that I'm thinking. So there are a couple things we could do. You could go on the Google Sheet side of things, and then you could change the formatting of the text so that it's like $, and then this won't be a big deal, and then you can still perform like text operations on this. I think like multiplication operations and stuff. I wonder if we do 5, if that's going to work. No, it's not going to work. So actually, one more thing we have to do is we have to strip out this $sign, and then we'll just do the formatting on this end. The reason why I want to strip out the $sign is because right now this is sort of a string. I don't really actually want a string. We can output it from the service fine if it's a string, but I just want to like turn this into a, I want to turn this just into a number. So instead of like $17,813.57, it's like 17813.57 instead. That's going to be pretty important because if you ever want to perform like numerical operations on this data later, if you want to pull it back into make.com, you're going to have to do this text formatting step anyway. So why don't we just solve that problem right now? I'm going to say set multiple variables. I'll drag that here. And then what I'm going to do is I'll say stripped let's say stripped total. And then what we have to do is we have to feed in the output that we get from the JSON module. And then we have to basically remove the $sign. And there are, I believe, a couple of ways to do this. I don't actually remember all of them. I think what we could probably do is format number, maybe parse number. So we might actually just be able to use a parse number module, feed in the total, and then get the strip total. I'm going to test this, and I'm going to use this exact string on my test, just to verify that this works. So let's say we got this. The number is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Fantastic. So what we can do then is on the last module, instead of feeding the total from here, we'll feed in the total from here, which will include that strip total, which will be much easier for us. All right, great. So that looks good. Why don't we go and run this from end to end now on the Canada Post data. Let's go back here. And you see that we now have the data formatted, but you see how it's on the right. The reason why it's on the right is because it's actually like formatted as just a number. And then the Google Sheets, if we go to format and then go number and then US dollar, Google Sheets is doing the formatting for us. So now we could theoretically multiply this by 5 or 10 or 100. We can't do that here because this is still technically, a piece of text. It's a string. And now what I'll do sort of as my final act is I'll go to maximum number of return rows. We'll go 2. And then we're going to run it on both of these puppies. That was number 1. And then looks like GPT-4 is going to be the vast majority of the time usage here, but that's okay. And then you'll see now that the text is formatted, the total is now formatted as a number, which is nice. And then we have all of the line items from the invoices that we received previously. Now, whether or not this is particularly interpretable, I don't know. But as I mentioned to you previously, you can train the model pretty easily to deliver you the exact format that you want. You just need to provide a couple of examples of before and after. And if you're not sure how to do that, you can watch any one of my videos on AI text processing. I probably have like 15 of them up. But yeah, that's more or less it. What I'll do now is I'm just going to play around a little bit with the various formats of invoice to PDF, just so you guys can see what's going on, how this works. Remember how previously there was PDF to text, simple, no layout, fast. What I want to do now is I want to show you guys PDF to text. which will include the layout, which is going to be really interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlink this, and then we'll go one returned row. I'm going to run this puppy. This took a lot longer, and it used more credits. But you can see now that this text is actually laid out just like a real invoice is. And now that I think about it, this might actually help AI determine what's what. So maybe this is what you feed into AI if you're comfortable spending a little bit more time and credits making something happen. Presumably the formatting of this text, like the words and the sentences and the words that are next to each other, are probably more relevant to each other. They're sort of conceptually categorized as a group. So maybe the model would do better with that than with the previous flow. So that was PDF to text. We could do PDF to JSON too. Let's give that a try. This is probably going to use some internal model to format stuff as well. I don't know. So we go documents, and now everything's fed. It's sort of like encapsulated within this JSON. So this page count, page, index, whatever. And then objects value. We've essentially broken all of this stuff down into what looks like tabular data, where we have the customer number, invoice number, customer reference number, customer reference 2, right? I'm just going to open up one of these in the middle here. That's probably more recognizable. Let me see here. Okay, we have some prices here, which is nice. So if I go before, you'll see that this JSON is now formatted. So basically what it did is it took this whole thing and then tried to convert this into like a key and then a value. Key and then a value. Key and then a value. And the idea here is that data may be easier for you to parse procedurally if you get the exact same invoice every single time or exact same format every single time. You could easily just say, oh, okay, every time we run this, I always want row 20, column 2 or something. Then you don't really have to use AI to do the formatting for you. And then there's CSV as well. CSV will be pretty similar. It's just going to turn all of this stuff into comma-separated value, which you can then upload to Google Sheets directly. But just keep in mind that, this may not necessarily be more parsable. Basically, we've just added a bunch of random spaces wherever their proprietary process sees fit, which is pretty interesting. But you might be able to feed this into Google Sheet and then see where that goes. Why don't I try down here? So if I try and separate this, then I get this. And then I think if I go to data, split text into columns here, then now I sort of have it all in like column format. Granted, this is still not super meaningful. Just keep in mind that PDF parsers and processors, they all process things using their own super proprietary method. And whether or not that method actually translates to like good CSVs. Like if it's too good to be true, it probably is. It's not going to like turn this into a perfect Google Sheet every time. And yeah, there are a variety of other formats down here as well. I also mentioned that right now we're importing the file from the URL, but a lot of the time you're going to be getting data directly from like an email or something, right? So how exactly do you do that? How do you get data from an email if, instead of it being like this, instead of it being a URL, it's instead like a file that you have to download or something? Well, I'll show you how. The first step is we're going to get this URL from the Google Sheets output, right? So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go HTTP. And then I will get a file from a given URL. I'm going to feed in the URL of the invoice here. I'm going to unlink this, so I'm only testing these two. Then I'm going to click Run Once. And what I ended up getting is I ended up getting a bunch of data at this buffer code page binary format, which may not mean anything to you. But all this really is this is just a translation of this from English into binary, basically like a machine language that machine parsers will use to rebuild a PDF on the back end. And now anytime you download a file module as a previous step in a flow, and then a subsequent step requires like a file to be uploaded, you can just automatically map it. It'll automatically find the downloaded file module for you in that format. If you go to map here, you'll see what it's really doing. It's feeding in the binary data here as the data field, and the output file name here is the file name. But this will work exactly the same as what we were doing previously. So I'm just going to go to PDF to text, no layout fast. Then, sorry, I have to do this twice because sometimes I'm a little too quick for make. And then essentially what we've done is we fed the exact same data in. It's just instead of pulling it from a file URL, we're actually doing the downloading ourselves. And maybe this is good because maybe then you can do something else with this. I don't know. Maybe you can store this data somewhere, or maybe you can download a file onto your server, right? There are a variety of other flows that you can use. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to go back to importing a file from the URL, then selecting this source, and then I'm going to download this as the blueprint for you guys so that anybody that watches this that wants to use this as sort of like their inspiration can do so pretty easily. So let's just export this blueprint. Awesome, and we have it now. Cool, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I had a lot of fun putting it together. This is how to essentially take a PDF, any sort of PDF, whether it's an invoice or a resume or, I don't know, even like a white paper, and then turn it into structured data using a PDF parser and make.com. Oh, and artificial intelligence. Don't forget the like galaxy-sized brains that are humming on servers 24/7 that make all this possible. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below as a comment. Otherwise, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.